to ask any of the questions you have. So yeah, I guess time is to introduce myself. I'm Julian. I'm your host today. I'm the project manager at Funding Box, which is a European deep tech accelerator, and a partner in Photon Hub Europe. Photon Hub Europe is a project funded by the European Commission, which seeks to boost the competitiveness and uptake of photonics across Europe. So if you're a company innovating in photonics and are interested in any of the following 3 topics, definitely check it out. Grant funding and technical support is number 1. Second is business and investment readiness coaching support. And third is training and access to advanced research centers focused on technologies. So I've actually got a slide for that, which I should have put before. Regarding the investment readiness support, which is well, part of the journey we're taking with the Photon Hub series. We are running this webinar series, but we're also launching this community, which some of you might have already joined, where there's all kinds of news around the world of photonics. But more importantly, as of last week, we launched this investment readiness coaching and investor matchmaking, where we're going to select about 30 companies in the world of photonics. So it doesn't have to be pure photonics. It can be what we also refer to as photonics enabled, so with some photonics technology involved, and companies who are looking to raise funding in the second half of 2022. So it's a one-kind investment readiness training to help those startups and scale-ups in general pitch to investors, present financials, understand due diligence process, understand all the lingo, demonstrate success, legal documentation, etc., etc. It will culminate in the Info Venture Summit, mid of October 2022 in Bordeaux in France, where those selected startups will have a chance to meet investors one-on-one. And we've got a variety of perks that you can find by going on the microsite page, which my colleague is going to share in the chat now. But some of those perks include attending the event and getting free tickets for that, getting personalized feedback from investors, getting a fast track to getting even more out of the summit, as well as one-on-one mentoring sessions, which are quite valuable. So taking into account that my colleague shared the link there, feel free to fill in the application as soon as you get a chance. Without wanting to spend too much time making intros and still seeing people joining the room here, I think we're all here for a single thing, so let's jump right into it. The name as the name Photonpreneurs suggests, it's designed by Essence to share fundraising tips and best practices around everything to do with the science and technology of light, i.e. photonics. So here we've got, I'm happy to welcome, well, first of all, Marek from Vigo Ventures. He's the managing partner of the fund. He's an active private investor in early stage photonics and deep tech companies. He is a juror and mentor on many prestigious organizations like MIT Innovators, Under 35, or Tech2 Photonics, which happen also to be a partner in Photon Hub Europe. Some of his portfolio companies include Photon IP in the Netherlands, Deep Detection in Spain, KSM Vision, or Custom Dot, which is in Belgium. On the other side, we've got Paul from Forward.One. His portfolio companies include Roxys, FloatScan, SensorFact, Quix Quantum, or Photosynthetic. He was managing director of corporate finance at Campen and Co. before joining Forward.One as a partner. And he has a variety of very interesting things to share with us as well today, including his thoughts about strategic planning, from developing product to assessing the market, shaping your organization, and financing growth. So that's my quick introduction about everything to do with the webinar series and from Photon Hub. So I'll let both speakers introduce themselves maybe in more details, and more importantly, introduce their funds, their respective funds. Let's start with you, maybe, Paul. You're muted, so let's start with Marek maybe first.
Oh, he's already unmuted.
Already unmuted. There you go.
Please.
There you go, Paul.
Well, thank you so much for the intro, Julian, and happy to be in the webinar. My name is Paul, founder of Forward.One, a relatively young fund. We started 4 years ago, basically with the thesis that there's so much great technology in the Netherlands and great entrepreneurs in the Netherlands, and we want to contribute to helping entrepreneurs and young startups grow into internationally dominant companies. My background is in economics and investment banking. Our fund invests in an early stage. We typically aim to be the first fund investor on board of a startup. We write checks from 250K to 2.5 million as a first check. We focused on the northwest of Europe, investing out of our second 140 million fund. And basically our philosophy is that the entrepreneur teams are our champions. So they know their tech best, often better than we do it. We want to help them in actually supporting them in building their business, being a strategic sounding board, helping them with all sorts of things like HR, like strategy, like finance. And that's also mirrored in the composition of our partner team, which consists of successful entrepreneurs, successful tech entrepreneurs, and investment and finance professionals. And with that, we hope to have sort of a broad offering to startups to actually offer them what they need most in their growth.
Great. Over to you, Marek.
Thanks a lot. My name is Marek. As it was mentioned, I represent Vigo Ventures, a all photonic oriented investor. We have been also brought to life in 2017. And since that time, we have been growing our presence on the European market, investing, being located in Warsaw, Poland, but investing pan-Europeanly in companies up to Series A that are looking for financing and are either photonic companies or photonic enabled companies for that matter. The structure of the funds that I represent is comprised of partners that give us, from one side, a technology backbone, a partnership which is Vigo Photonics, and these guys have been on the market for the past more than 3 decades, understanding the field of photonics quite well, and have a thorough understanding of how to identify certain bottlenecks for the companies that are trying to translate the technology into a sellable product. And on the other hand, the partnership within our structure is a privately held investment firm. So this type of structure give us the possibility of addressing financing going up to 10 million euros, with Vigo Ventures tickets going from around 200K to 1 million, with a possibility of this cascade financing scheme with a private investor being regarded as a potential co-investor in later rounds. Focusing from my side, I also have an economic background. I have had an experience of a very steep learning curve going into photonics, into hardware projects. But since the very beginning, I was working with entrepreneurs and scientists on trying to bring their ideas to the market, trying to translate sometimes very difficult ideas of the value proposition and being them, you might say, digestible for the common folk. And since 2018, all of the experience that I gained previously on working with entrepreneurs and scientists, I am able to leverage by being on the side of the investor. So for the past years, I've been working with profound experts and truly beautiful minds in the fields of their expertise, and I'm really happy that the support that we can bring very early stage to the companies is something a little bit more than just capital, because the projects require more attention, more partnership at the very beginning to understand how to formulate this growth scenario for them to prevail, but also grow within the European playing field.
Great. We'll be coming back to that last point later on, but I guess I can get the conversation started with my usual first questions to all speakers, and that is, based on both your experiences, what are the do's and don'ts of raising capital? I mean, what should entrepreneurs must have, or on the contrary, must avoid? So any tips on how to raise your next round of funding, which is the reason why most people are attending today. So maybe start with you, Paul.
I would focus on two very simple points. I think first of all, timing is always of the essence, and things always take longer than you think they are taking. So my first advice would be start on time. And the second thing we always focus on is actually on teams. We think that a team is essential to bring a business to life, which is an incredibly difficult journey. And having a team offers you complementary skills. It's important to give and receive feedback from your teammates, and in addition to that, it's much more fun. So those two things for me are really essential in going for a fundraise. In addition to that, there's the typical things like your product, your IP portfolio, your go-to-market strategy, your development roadmap, which we always look upon in our due diligence. But I think timing and having a great team on board are key to a successful fundraise. And to be precise, on the team front, the team doesn't need to be complete. That's the aspect of a startup. It's starting up a business, and you can't be perfect. But what we're really looking for is a couple of experts in their own domain. It can be the technical domain, but it can well be also the sales and marketing or strategic domain. But there must be two very complementary skill sets that we look for in founder teams.
Okay, great. Anything to add, Marek?
Yeah, I would have the 5 do's and the 4 don'ts that I can take you through. I mean, you need to know what you want from the investor. You need to know, you need to be prepared to not only answer the questions of the investors, but also ask the investor questions and challenge her or him to understand what they really can bring to the table, how they can contribute to the, as Paul said, to the stage where you're at. So this is aligned with the timing that you start, but also be aware of that you're also, you can also ask questions and you can also require answers from the investors. The second one would be really know your industry, really know the Jekyll and Hyde part of it. So the investor really wants to know that you know your game and you understand how to navigate through the waters of suppliers, competitors, clients, and to know that you will own up to it when the time comes. So that you feel fluent through it. So you know that there are certain things that there are limits on the market here, and you understand them because either you lived through them, and you are here to tell the story, or you know that these things might appear in the future, and you know how and how to solve them. A tricky point, next point is try to either be referable or make yourself referable to the success stories that are out there, if possible, obviously. So you need to help the investor read through the matrix code and see the pattern, why investing in your company, in your tech, in your idea, what type of product or solution you're bringing to the market, why does it fit in the trends that are out there? Really, another point is have a clear way of explaining your USP. Have a compelling way of describing why there's a need for your product or technology. And the last, but definitely not least, have an exit plan in hand. So really know why, how, and when it can happen, because when you decide to take an investor on board, this is this type of relation that you're going into. And the don'ts, really don't be unprepared. This is the one thing that really stands out. Don't assume that the investor will make an investment case for you. This is also important, that you need to understand how to explain the value and explain what you will bring to the market after the investment, and why this is important to make this decision to invest in you.
Actually, on that last point of being prepared, I guess it goes perfectly with the comment I made about the open call that we're running with the investment readiness mentoring. So hopefully that can help people as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also about the timing. Again, you don't raise when you're running out of the gas, but you need to be aligned when you raise. It needs to be aligned with your growth path. It needs to be aligned with your strategy. If you need cash, of course you do, because you've planned it that you will need cash. This is how it's supposed to happen. And the last point is really don't overpromise and underdeliver. So just don't lie.
Don't lie. I guess that we could keep that as a tagline. Well, you both touched upon timing. So Marek, maybe since you got the mic, I'll let you talk more about timing. What's the usual timeline that people should look at? Obviously, also Paul said that I mean, the timing is everything, and not to run out of cash as well. So yeah.
I could use also a quote from Gandalf, that a wizard is never late, nor he is early, but he arrives precisely when he means to. And this is exactly what should happen with your funding. It should happen exactly when you intend it to happen. And you know, that being said, not all endeavors are investment material. Not all companies will make a good exit scenario. Some businesses will just be very good businesses for the founders. They will make good money. They will make good organic growth, but they will just not be investment material. And this needs to be kept in mind, that the founders themselves should also be aware that they want to have an investor to join, which is a partnership with the investor. So it should be consensual.
And Paul, on the question of timing, is there anything that you want maybe to add? Early is better than late, is what you said, but anything that you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think Mark already made a couple of great points about it. It's essentially making your pitch before you make your pitch. So if you start to approach a number of fund investors when you want to raise your funding, it's often a bit too late, because you just need time to build a relation. You just need time also to get to know the party on the other side of the table. I mean, you really want to work with this person on the other side of the table. You want to work with this fund. So it's very often what we see, a process of building your relation, also explaining your company, explaining your investment case, which is often very difficult in a very compressed pitch of 3/4 or an hour. So our recommendation is to build up the relation. So even if you don't have a pitch, just get to know each other. It's much more often it's again the person's building the relation than your fantastic great pitch with all sorts of PowerPoint slides to blow the other guy on the table.
And on that point, Paul, what should entrepreneurs take into consideration when they're assessing their potential investors? How do they select the best investors for them? Is there anything like due diligence from startups?
Well, I mean, I like the concept of a reverse due diligence. So in that sense, I think every early stage fund will tell you they're a hands-on fund, and they will always give you the same things where they will be supportive in terms of industry knowledge, in terms of network, in terms of helping develop the business, etc. It's really in having a dialogue, talking to all the difficult strategic points, talking through examples of where funds have helped their portfolio companies, is that you really understand what kind of support a fund can give you. And when I hear Marek's story, I mean they're experts in photonics. So in that sense, I think that they can give great support about insight in business. I think from our end, we're more of a general deep tech fund. So maybe on the photonic side will be, less well known in the business. However, into actually, building businesses, we've got very good expertise. So those are nuances. There's no good or no bad. It's just, what fits with your requirements.
Marek, you mentioned in your introduction that added value. And so I wanted to know a bit more about what role you take as an active investor in your portfolio companies. Like, what's your involvement, value add, advice you give companies?
I'm coming back to the don'ts. So don't lie. This also comes down to the investors. So don't lie of what type of value you can bring, because this will come back and bite you. But in all of the early stage companies that we're in discussions with, there's a lot of work to be done. You need to get your hands dirty, and you need to really want to work with those founders and make those founders want to work with you. And at the early stages, there's you can pick and choose. This can be working on refining the strategy, understanding the growth path and the KPIs that should be there for the projects to meet, to defend themselves, that the funds that they are spending are bringing value for the investor, but also pushing the company forward in terms of the maturity. It's working on identifying the milestones from that point of view, of what will be not only referable from the technology point, but also from the market point of view. That's this is something that we work closely with our companies in trying to push them, even if they're very early on, to get them to talk to people from our network, from our partners, from our portfolio companies, also that have a certain experience on board. I mean, across our portfolio, there's around 100 of field experts working. So there's a lot of knowledge flowing through the companies that we already invested in. This is also very concrete support that comes from either Vigo Photonics or Warsaw Equity Group, for that matter. So two of our LPs. So not to give you phrases, but the examples of the done, not planned things that we have done. So the access to certain distributors or partners within Vigo Photonics that can help enter a certain market for a company, to identify the right distributors for a right company. This is something that takes longer time, and here we can benefit from relations that have been built for years and years by Vigo. This can mean also approaching joint local or European level projects with a larger entity that has their own production facilities, that have hundreds of people working for them and with them, and with international clientele. So this is another thing that is happening right now for the benefit of the portfolio companies. The other one is the team that was mentioned by Paul. That is one of the most important. This is also, in our case, a bit cliche, but still, all of the IP, tech, brilliant solutions that are being brought to the market, those are being brought by the team, by the founders. So really helping them focus on what is important for them, and bringing, for example, lacking resources on the people that could support the company is something that we work closely with the companies. So we identified the people that might be interesting for the company to join them, and help them with the recruiting process, help them in aligning this recruitment process and the HR strategy with the growth path of the company. And from our end, there's never too early to start planning that and putting this plan into action. And this was already mentioned in the beginning, but inter-portfolio knowledge sharing and leveraging the ideas and understanding how to approach certain clients in a certain market. What is the decision process? with selling certain components or products to a market vertical. This is something that you chase this knowledge for sometimes for months, and in our ends, we want to and we share this internally.
And Paul, anything to add from you as a more holistic deep tech fund at Forward.One?
I really would like to tag on to what Marek said about sort of all of the other activities that need to be built in building a company. So, you know, building your tech, building your development roadmap, creating a go-to-market strategy is one. But on the other hand, there's, you know, mundane things like, financing, like HR. And we sometimes see that starting companies make suboptimal choices in the type of experts they get on board. So because, you know, they're restricted on cash, they think, well, you know, we don't need an HR manager, the CEO will do it himself. Or, you know, as a part-time job, we will also do the finances. And we think that actually distracts a lot of their attention from what they really should be doing. And it's also a suboptimal use of time. And what we aim to do is, as a fund, to have experts on board, experts that we have got on our payroll that are available for our portfolio companies. And in that respect, we select a couple of people which we think are great, that, you know, can step in for sort of kicking off the process in a startup of building all of the other activities. And obviously, they will then hire their own experts. But there's always a thing, you don't need a full-time HR manager when you're a startup. You may also only need that person for, you know, a couple of hours a week. So in that sense, we really believe in focusing the entrepreneurs on what they're really good at, and basically helping them and giving all of the support that they would need.
Okay. Marek, you actually touched upon LPs, some of your LPs, so limited partners. I guess, do you want to give us a kind of a taster of what it is on the other side of the mirror? So what are the ups and downs of launching and deploying a fund? And how do you raise money? Like, how does it work?
Yep.
Because I guess that's what most entrepreneurs may not be aware of, the process.
Seeing behind the curtain. Just before I do that, just one last comment to the role that the investor takes. I mean, from our side, it's very important that all of the work that we're doing with the companies is not to make the investor happy. So all of the work that we're putting prior to the investment is input to have a possibility of planning how to put those things into work. As Eisenhower said, that plans are nothing, but planning is everything. You need to be able to adjust to reality and be able to shift and be agile in that, and not having a carved in stone plan that you need to follow. And when it goes, coming back to your question about raising a fund itself, you know, I would say it's not that different when a startup raises capital. You also need to be convincing. You also need to be ambitious. You also need to have a plan in place, and be able to plan how to deliver upon the expected returns for the LPs. You need to be aligned with the hellish and blessed trinity of the time, team, and timing that you need to also have when raising funds for a VC. You need to be able to create a believable scenario when the resources that you have, the partners that you have identified, and the value that, in our case, for example, is being brought also by our limited partners, comprises into a scenario that investing in early stage photonic companies is the way to go. We have been called special kind of crazy in the past. There are, you know, very few alternatives on the market that help entrepreneurs on this early stage to raise capital. So you need to be quite diligent in explaining to your limited partners in why there's there's a compelling reason to work with us and to give us the understanding that the returns that we will make on the investments are in fact attractive enough to focus on such a field. This also comes down to what Paul mentioned, is to building a certain relation. We have a very close relation with our limited partners. So there's a constant feedback loop on what is expected, what is needed, but also what is being brought to the table by us or by our new portfolios that we add. So I would say it's a quite similar process of convincing that you have a case that is there's realizable in a certain period of time, that you have the idea of how to prevail among other entities that are out there, but at the end of the day that you are able to bring value with your portfolio companies for your limited partners. That being said.
Thanks a lot. I guess to delve back down to our original topic, which is more aimed at startups. I guess, Paul, one for you is what drives you to make an investment? What have you seen in some of your portfolio companies, if you want to use concrete examples, that led you to want to invest in those companies?
I think coming back to my overall theme and our overall theme, it's in the end often the team that is the dominant factor in deciding whether you want to go, into certain business or not. It's often, I think the old saying goes that, if with a B-class idea, if you've got an A-class team, you will pull it off. But if you've got a B-class team with an A-class idea, it's unlikely to be a success. So that's really what we are what we're looking for. In addition to that, it's let's say the future proofness of a certain business. I think photonics is a great example for that. I think this technology offers so many opportunities. It offers, more efficient. It offers, better ways of measuring things. It offers, a whole suite of possibilities. So I think a really revolutionary technology. That's what we are really looking for in combination with a great team.
Marek, yeah. Anything to add? I see you smiling.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I made a circle, and I might sound cliche, because I mentioned this earlier. You might think that is the technology, is the IP. Sometimes it's even already the traction or the problem that is being solved that is really compelling to you. And as I mentioned, all of those things, if they are the drivers for you to make an investment decision, are correct, but you need to understand what are the drivers of those and who brings those things to the table. Those are the people. Those are the people that really know what they want, and they are able to convince you why they devote their time, why they devote their money, why they put their energy into achieving a certain goal. So to try to boil it down, really, what is the equation that we try to put down to what makes us do the investment? It's vision plus ambition plus measurable KPIs equals an investment, and it's more or less that needs to be in place to convince us.
Now that we actually have a better understanding of both what your funds focus on and both your investment theories and what you provide, like what was the best way for entrepreneurs who want to initiate dialogue with you both, or investors in general? What's the I guess alongside with that is, how long does it take between the moment somebody approaches you and the first meeting and potentially even the first check? Paul, maybe you want to take that first.
Yeah, thank you. What we try to do is have as low as possible a barrier between the investor and the entrepreneur. They're always welcome to to call us for coffee, for video call, because we think that's the most effective way of communicating. So, great pitch decks are really nice, but it's much more about the entrepreneur being able to communicate his or her specific idea, go-to-market strategy, etc. So, for us, it's being very open and very willing to talk to ambitious entrepreneurs. In terms of how much time would it take from your first contact to an actual investment, we try to be transparent, and we try to be quick. We can be quick because we are, as partners, our own investment committee, so we don't have any external committees that usually take some time to to get through all the formalities. And quick in the sense that we also are able to do our due diligence ourselves. So we very rarely need any external experts to help us with our due diligence. Now, having said that, an investment always takes longer than you want it to take, because there's always little issues to solve, cap table, balance sheet issues, some due diligence issues. But I think that within the space of your first pitch to closing, you could think about something like 3 months.
3 months on average.
Julian, a question, because there's a question in the chat. Should I address it already?
Well, I was going to address some of the questions afterwards, but there's one which is directly aimed at you, and you've seen it.
Yeah.
So you might as well answer it now.
Yeah,
I guess that's Paul asking about whether you were only looking for pre-revenue scouting of companies at either stage.
Yeah. To answer that, like a lawyer would, it depends. To be honest, most of the companies that we are in discussions with are pre-revenues, but they are companies within our pipeline that already have proof of concept projects running. They have pilot projects running, so there is some traction already on board. But the necessity of having revenues is not a metric that we have to have in place to make an investment decision. I hope this answers the question.
I guess anyone can ask more questions, including Paul. If he wants more details, feel free to keep them coming in the chat. We're actually coming to an end. I've got a few questions myself remaining, and then we'll jump onto any remaining questions in the list. One actually is around due diligence. So you mentioned, Paul, that sometimes things come up during your due diligence process, including around IP or cap table. So did you want to go a bit more in details about what your due diligence typically looks like? You said that it's usually an average of 3 months, so that already answers part of my question, but what due diligence you carry?
Yeah, in due diligence, we, amongst others, just look at the IP portfolio. So what does it look like? How unique is it? Do we have freedom to operate? Are there ways to further build on the IP portfolio? What's the patent strategy? So those are the things that basically we base our investment on. So they should be solid. So that's what we're working on a lot. In addition to that, we've got a fairly extensive team due diligence, and actually talking to all of the team members, and also making sure that apart from the, let's say, the deal team, also the non-deal team members within our firm talk to the entrepreneur team. Because as an investor, sometimes you can sort of be a bit blindsided if you're working on a certain investment, and you actually need other parties. You need a fresh pair of eyes to actually talk to the team. And in the team, we also do things like personality profiles to see how the whole colors of the team blend together, and whether we actually have a team that has very complementary skill, but also character sets. In addition to that, we have a very thorough analysis of the potential market and also potential clients, partners of a certain business. So we want to talk to the decision makers within the clients to see how they value the technology, why they would use it, how they would use it, what would be price points at which they would be using it. So those are the three areas that I would rate as the most crucial parts of a due diligence.
Okay. One for you, Marek, I guess, is what are the most important technologies you're particularly enthusiastic about in photonics specifically at the moment?
I can answer both questions, yours and one from the chat. So
yeah, I was gonna have a follow-on on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Why photonics per se? Because from one side it gives us a unique focus that is driven by partially by the partner that we have, that gives us a lot of insights and a lot of history to share the knowledge and the network and the people that have been exposed for the past several years on different challenges and different technologies that tried to prevail but failed, and the others succeeded. So there's a lot of knowledge for us to benefit from. So the baggage of experience that is here, we can really utilize it. And on the other hand, narrowing down to photonics really opens up the market a lot, because photonics are present in very many solutions. As Paul mentioned, it brings a unique set of data input to be analyzed, of unprecedented quality, of sources of non-destructive testing that can be done, on bringing quality food from farm to fork. So there are different, you might say, global challenges, grand challenges that can be and are being addressed by photonics. So we don't focus on a certain industry vertical and we try to penetrate this, but we're looking more holistically. And you might say that we are very focused on photonics, but on the other hand, you might say that we are very opportunistic for that matter, because we are looking at photonic solutions that are addressing different market verticals, from zero emission, scalable photonic integrated systems, accident-free transport, as I mentioned, non-destructive testing, but also wearables and advanced manufacturing, that all of those fields can highly benefit from a photonic solution that can be introduced within the value chain.
And actually, Marek, just as a follow-on on that, I guess Mike is asking whether you operate in quantum as well, and what about linkage from photonics to quantum in general?
For example, Vigo Photonics has their own epitaxial division. So this is a direct conversation, for example, with Vigo Photonics to be had. What type of overlaps there could be made with a quantum realm? On our end, depending on the stage of the project, we invest in projects that can be and are quantum oriented, but I think it's a very broad question, and it's a different avenue even to be taken when we're talking about quantum key distribution, single photon sources. And we'll be specific. Quantum key distribution startups. We had a few discussions with those, so happily to jump on a further discussion with a similar one, and currently are in discussions with quite a few on the European level.
Cool. If I revert back to you, Paul, I guess and I'm using air quotes, as a generalist deep tech fund, what's your particular focus in photonics, and why photonics is an area of interest for you guys?
Well, maybe I can tell you a bit about sort of let's say the reverse journey we made to photonics. We've invested in Quix Quantum, which is a quantum photonics company. And the reason for investing in that company is that photonics offer the opportunity to use existing technology applied in the quantum field. So we liked the fact that the technology was there, was tried and proven. And second of all, it made it possible to generate quantum effects in normal circumstances, i.e. room temperature instead of the cryo-based technologies. Via our investment in Quiz Quantum, we sort of also saw more and more of the opportunities that photonics offer, and that photonics technologies that are there. So in terms of sensing, in terms of transmitting high volumes of data. So it's sort of from a specific company, we realized that photonics actually offers much more than just quantum. And so therefore, we see the potential, and we are focusing more and more of our fund towards, photonic companies.
And I guess we touched upon this a bit, but Magdalena is asking in the comment, what's the most effective way of reaching out to your pre-selected list of VC in order to start building that relationship? So I guess attending events is usually a good answer, but what do you think about LinkedIn or other ways? Either of you can take it, and I can see Marek nod already.
I mean, it's the medium is secondary. LinkedIn, email, phone, referral, conference, bumping into in the street to each other. This is secondary. I mean, in our case, I would not wait to get in touch with us because it might be too late for us, for example, to engage. I would set off with just getting to know each other first. You need to have a compelling investment case. You don't need to even have a deck yet, but have a conversation started for us to understand why do you believe that looking for an investor is the route for you. Why do you believe that having this investment journey and discussions about exits, further rounds, valuations is something that you want to go into, and you will feel comfortable having that journey with you, which will mean exponential growth, which will mean entering new markets and being out there, you might say. In our case, the is that you need to have something more than an idea. A prototype stage is preferable on our end, that you have already committed into proving that something might work, that is not on the level of an idea that you want to pursue. But that being said, within the companies that we have in our portfolio, when we are discussing, there's a certain very precisely defined R&D roadmap that benefits from certain grants to soft funding projects that leverage further R&D development.
And I guess Nuno raises an interesting topic here, saying that photonics, and reminding us that photonics is an enabling technology for applications in many different types of products and businesses. Are you guys mostly looking at B2B companies, or are you actually open to a wider array of options?
In our case, it's B2B, or at the end of the day, B2B2C. But having a strictly B2C Kickstarter type of project, we would have to discuss the business model behind that.
And you, Paul?
We are purely focused on B2B, and that's where our expertise is. That's where we feel comfortable. So and we also think that photonics, being an enabling technology, also is most suitable for B2B applications. There's one more thing I would like to add to what Marek said in terms of how to reach out to investors. I think it's very important if you have got some sort of reference. I think Marek, but also we are flooded by all sorts of fantastic technologies, great entrepreneurs, and having somebody referencing you that is close to the investor is super important, because that just gives you an extra edge, and it just also helps us as investor to place you within the universe. I mean, if I would be approached by, a startup from, let's say, Taiwan, I would find it very, very difficult to, to rate that entrepreneur, to know how good an entrepreneur is, just because, it's just in a different geography, different culture, etc. So having a reference close to the investor, I think is super critical.
And actually, the geographical focus is something I want to jump into, but first I'll take Pastor's question because he reminds me that I jumped it. So I guess what's the advantage of having a photonic focused investor when you're not a photonics company, I guess is the question. So maybe that's aimed at you, Marek, more than Paul.
Yeah, happy to take it. It will come down how important in your company, in your technology, in your product is the photonic component itself. How crucial is to understand what type of suppliers you need to engage with, how you need to plan the ramp up of production and to identify the sources of these components. Sometimes those are components off the shelf that you just use and you leverage the value that is brought by some very non-specific elements in your product, which doesn't mean that you need to focus on, need to have a photonic focused investor on board. But on the other hand, we had discussions with companies that are starting off with larger components for that matter. And in their roadmap, they see photonic integration coming into place. And this means that you need to plan a bit further ahead what you need to have, what you need to prove, what type of partners you need to engage with to validate if certain item miniaturization or going into volume production for certain applications will be achievable. So to identify what is the benefit of having a photonic-based investor is a discussion of understanding what type of value you would like to extract from this type of investor. If you have a certain solution that uses a photonic component, you might also want to approach a strictly financial investor because the photonic aspect is not crucial or important from the perspective of your growth or scaling.
Thanks, Marek, for that. Paul, I guess to go back to your, you mentioned geographical focus. So do you want to tell us a bit more about what your kind of investment theory relies on in terms of geographical focus? Is it mostly Europe? Do you co-invest with investors even further afield? And do you want companies to be primarily focused on the EU market, or is well, the US, Asia, etc. Areas of interest for you as well?
For us, let's say the driving factor in selecting a geography would be more the closest we have to a startup. So if we want to help, we should also be able to help in terms of our own network, in terms of being actually also physically reasonably close to a business, so that you can basically take your car, drive an hour, be there, sit on the table, because it's the face-to-face contact that often, even though video calls offer a lot of possibilities, you just need to sit together at a certain point in time. That's why our first fund was focused on the Netherlands only. And now we are broadening our scope towards Northwestern Europe. In first instance, it will be Belgium as well as Germany. If we are investing abroad, we will always do that with trusted partners. We do know that different countries are different networks, different countries are different legal systems. Therefore, we like to work with partners that we have already co-invested with.
Right. And I guess we've only got 3 minutes left before we give everybody their freedom back. There was Simon asking a question about IP strategy for spin-offs coming from research centers. Is there any IP must-have that you would recommend to an early stage or pre-seed startup? Either of you can take this one, I guess, if you've got any insights.
Again, I might make a short comment on that. Again, it comes down to the strategy that you have and how much the IP will be aligned with the growth and the valuation of the company that will follow, how important the IP will be in scaling and building up your business, how important it will be in a possible exit scenario. It really, again, it depends. Ramping up or hoarding patents might be pricey. But if it's strictly aligned with what you're bringing and what you're solving, and it's a defendable case that this IP will be useful at the end of the day, not only to flashing the patent, but also making use of it, then I would say it's important. But it comes down to what is the IP strategy that you want to have in place, and how you see it resolve further down the road.
Paul, do you have anything to add to that?
There's often sort of it's a double-edged sword having, a broad patent portfolio. On the one hand, it gives you a lot of protection. On the other hand, it also shows the outside world what your tech is about. We invest in deep tech companies. They usually have, a whole amount of IP. That's what we're investing on. So we think it's crucial to have, a large volume of IP in your company. Indeed, having a very broad patent strategy is a matter of, a cost-benefit analysis. And sometimes we advise companies actually not to publish a patent because we think it's better kept as a secret in the company.
Great. I think that's a great point to finish on. And so that's a wrap for today. Thank you very much, Paul and Marek, for your insights. I really wanted to thank you both, because you did mention preparing this that some of those topics would need a lot more time than what we were allocating to it. So hopefully we can do a follow-up. I'm delighted that we had so many questions coming from the audience. Hopefully we'll be producing that video of the webinar and sharing it on the Photonic community and to all registrants as well. And I guess my colleague will share the detail to the open call right now. Once again, it's closing beginning of June. Again, if you need some help regarding all of the topics that we mentioned today, and to help you prep to be investor ready, I think this is a great opportunity. It's free, and we'll be selecting about 30 companies and introducing them to a variety of investors and taking them to an event. So Marek, you've got something to add.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that, which is aligned with what you're saying right now. And I would like to make a coming out with a short information that on our side, basing on the stage that we are working on with the companies, we are also working closely with the partners of launching this type of, you might say, an accelerator type of approach to the early stage companies that can benefit not only from the funding, but also from close cooperation with us, and making, light speeding your way to funding readiness. So, and then we put our mouth when our money where our mouth is, and then possibly invest in later down the road after preparing the company to being investor ready. So this is very aligned with also the initiative of Photon Hub.
Great, and hopefully both can be combined as well. So
exactly.
By all means, we will be releasing the name of the mentors soon as well, and the name of the company selected. So please apply directly on the link below. In the meantime, we'll keep you posted for the next upcoming webinar, for the video of this webinar, and hopefully talk to you all soon. Thanks again, guys. Bye.
Thank you very much.